Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf HaYomi, CHULLIN Daf Kuf Chav Zayin. We begin on Kuf Chavav Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan. Back to the Shmoina Shratzim, those 8 distinct creatures which are going to be metame. They give off tumah when they die. One of them is your mouse. Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara will tell us about 2 types of mice, 2 types of species. One is a land mouse, dry land mouse, which lives on dry land, and we have the water mouse, the sea mouse, some sort of water creature which gives the appearance of a mouse. Interestingly, the Gemara later will tell us that there's a parallel system. Whichever animals we find on land, there's a parallel at sea, some sort of fish or sea creature which exhibits similar features to that land creature, one of which is the achbar. So we have the land mouse and we have the sea mouse. Which one is going to give off tumah? Tanu Rabbanan, Mitech shenemar achbar. Since the Torah refers to a mouse, perhaps all types are included. All types are going to give off tumah. Shemei ani, I can perhaps conclude from that. I feel achbar shebayam, even the sea mouse is metame. Why? Sheshmai achbar is called an achbar. V'dinu. So the response is no, because we're going to compare it to another one of the 8 creatures, which is a chulda, a weasel. Let's compare it. Timei bechulda. The Torah applies tumah to a chulda. V'timei be'achbar, likewise to a mouse. Let's compare the two. Ma chulda, just like the weasel, is a land creature. Min hagadol ha'aretz, a type which grows on land. Af achbar, likewise, the achbar on that list is a land creature only. Min hagadol ha'aretz, al-aretz. No, says the Gemara, oy kalechel derech su, perhaps I take a different approach and arrive at a different conclusion, and do include the water mouse. Timei b'chulda v'timei b'achbar. Yeah, the Torah applies tumah to a chulda and to an achbar. Ma chulda kol sheshma chulda, just like by the weasel. Any weasel which is called chulda is included. Achbar, likewise, by the mice. Kol sheshmai achbar, the tumah is applied to all those that are called achbar. It's in the name. V'afil achbar shebayam, so even the sea achbar, which is called sheshmai achbar. Talmud Bavli comes the pasuk and says, "V'zelachem tamei ba'asheretz hasheretz al haaretz." Right, so that's the pasuk. We learn from al haaretz, Talmud Bavli al haaretz. It needs to be a dry land creature. So as we're going to see, it's not about where it's currently situated. It's not about its current whereabouts. It's not about location. It's about species. A land species has tumah, but not a sea creature. So as the Gemara, who says maybe the Torah is stipulating current location. It's not dependent on type or species. It depends on where he is now. Al haaretz. So perhaps the term al haaretz is teaching us a bit different. Yochal al haaretz yitame, perhaps it's teaching us that while the mouse, whether it's this type or that type, sea type, dry land type, happens to be al haaretz, is situated on dry land, that activates a tumah. Yitame, yard liyam, it happens to be down in the water. Lo yitame, there's no tumah there. So perhaps it's about current location rather than species. Tam Malayimar. The next word in the pasuk is Tam Malayimar hasheretz. Right? It says basheretz hasheretz al haaretz. Hasheretz teaches kol makom shesheretz. Anywhere that this creature can survive, can maneuver himself. And Rashi explains, even the land mouse can do a little swim. Kol makom shesheretz, he has that ability to crawl around, to maneuver himself in water as well. So clearly, he'll be matami even in the water. So you can't discount an achbar which is situated in the water. Okay, so back to al haaretz. So what then does the pasuk mean? Only on dry land. Species. It's about the type, the min. of the Achbar Eretz is Matami, wherever he is, as opposed to the Achbar Hayam, which is not Matami. Whoa, says the one who says, oh yeah, no. Maybe this word Hasharet is not coming for this, it's coming for something else. Oh yeah, no. Ella, rather, Hasharet, the term Hasharet is a lashon of Pirya Verivya, a creature which is produced by the, standard mating system, like the pasuk says, of Bnei Yisrael, Parov Yishritzu. They multiplied, they were produced, right, by way of mating. That is going to be a sheret that has tumah. Kol HaMashritz, any sheret which is produced in this fashion, Yitame has tumah. But She'en Mashritz lo Yitame. He's produced in any other way, such as that mouse that grows out of the ground, which we referred to yesterday. Oitzi, I will exclude Achbar, this mouse, which grows right out of the ground, not by way of a mating system. Shechetzi basar, chetzi adama, which is half earth, half flesh coming out of the ground. Shein paravarava. He's not produced by way of a paravarava system. So perhaps that's the message of the pasuk, to exclude this type. Says the Gemara, you can't say that. You can't suggest that he's exempt from tumah v'dinu. Listen to this piece of logic. We're going to equate an achbar to a chulda once again. Timei b'chulda, but timei b'achbar. We find tumah applied to a weasel, and likewise to an achbar. Ma chulda, just like by the chulda, it's not limited to any specific, kol shema chulda. It applies to all types of weasels that have the name weasel. Av achbar, kol shema achbar. Likewise, it applies to all types of mice that have the label achbar. Avi achbar shechetz b'tzav v'chesed adama. That allows us to include even this ground-growing mouse. Says the Gemara, perhaps not. Perhaps take on a different approach. You want to compare him to a chulda? Fine. Ma chulda paravarava. Let's compare him to the paravarava element of a chulda. It's produced by way of mating. Av achbar paravarava. Likewise, the achbar in the pasuk is the only one produced in the same fashion. Talmud Leimar. Comes the pasuk and says, V'zelochem atome basheretz, right? We said basheretz, hasheretz al oretz, right? It's basheretz, hasheretz al oretz. So the word basheretz seems to be extra because we already have in the next pasuk b'chal hasheretz. That's coming to cover even this strange ground produced achbar. Okay. So at this point, what do we know? That basheretz covers this unique creature, this achbar out of the ground. Hasheretz tells you that even though the mouse, the dry land mouse, happens to be inserted in water, it does not cancel its tumah. And from the term al ha'aretz, we learn species, the land type, the land variety. That achbar is matami, but not the sea variety. Amar le Omer the Rabban Rava. So there was a certain chacham that asked Rava and challenged our assumption. He says, perhaps we can rearrange the psukim to produce a different result. Ema, perhaps we can suggest like this. The word basheretz, as we explained, refers to this strange, mouse phenomenon. Lasuya achbar, to cover the achbar, which is shechetzi basav chetzi adama, growing out of the ground, partially developed, it's mitami. But the word hasheretz will be applied as follows: hasheretz kol shu sheretz. That's going to tell you that any sheretz, any sheretz, which means that if the creature had been produced through mating, through peri verivia, will be matami. Even that sea mouse is matami. Right? So let's include the sea creature. As opposed to before we excluded it, let's include it. Oh, I know what you're thinking. What about al oretz? Which seem to teach us that it only applies to the land variety. No, al oretz yitami, yard liam yitami. perhaps the pasuk is teaching us that it's about location. If he's currently situated on dry land, that triggers its tumah. But if he's down in the water, lying dead in the water, he's not going to be metame. So we're making a slight switch in the psukim to achieve different results. Instead of excluding the achbar shebayam and insisting that the achbar of the yabash is metame wherever he is, let's just make a quick flip. No, the achbar shebayam is tameh, as is the achbar on dry land, provided they're sitting on dry land. Armalis, he says it's not plausible to go this route. You know why? On the one hand, you're saying that even the sea creature is metame, so you're not exempting the water from tumah, right? And then you're saying, but if it happens to be in the water, it's tar. It's unlikely. So if we have a choice between this approach in the psukim and the former approach, which is more logical, we'll take the former approach. Amalei says, once you've determined, you've labeled layam, the water, the sea, makam tumah, place of tumah. In fact, you're saying the water creature is metame, so it's producing tumah. Now you're saying, well, only if it's on dry land, unlikely. Mali hacha. What difference does it make if it's sitting here or there? Unlikely to make that distinction. If the sea can produce an impure creature, well, while still at sea, it's tar, unlikely. In which case, we'll go back to that earlier approach that led us to our conclusion that it's not about location, it's about species. Al Oretz is referring to the land achbar as opposed to the water achbar. But wherever he is, he's metame, whether he's on dry land or on water. That's what's learned from Hashoretz, because he can maneuver himself in water as well. And we had a special pasuk to include even the strange ground, produced achbar. Says the Gemara, "V'hai al oretz m'bailei." So we're basing our understanding of the psukim based on the extra psukim, right? But the word al oretz, that term has already been used for something else. V'hai al oretz m'bailei lahoitzi. It's coming to teach us as follows. There's a halacha when a person encounters an uncertainty regarding whether he touched tumah. Did I touch it? Did I not? Depends where you are. If you're in a private domain, or you're tamei. But there's another condition attached to it. That contaminated item has to connect to its environment. It has to be a suffix tumah irush sayach. It has to be part of the irush sayach environment. It has to be situated on the floor. It has to be sitting ala oretz. But if it's suspended mid-air, it doesn't relate to its environment. It does not have that same status. And that is learned from ala oretz. Sitting on the ground, firm. It's needed lahoitzi to exclude suffix tumah tzafa. A suffix, whether it encountered a tumah, and the tumah tzafa is floating. It doesn't generate the same result. The arbitza ala oretz, that pasuk is lahoitzi to exclude suffix tumah tzafa. A suffix tumah which happens to be floating. So the pasuk has already been used for something else, unavailable for today's discussion. Tarati ala oretz tzivi, we find ala oretz twice. One pasuk and the next. One for this, one for that. Tana Rabbana. So when the Torah enumerates the Shmoyne Shvatzim, it goes like this: Hatzav, which some translate as a faragatod, limineo to its type, indicating that it's not limited to one, to its type, to its family. What's similar to the tzav? Lahavia arva, to include the arvad, which is a strange creature, which is produced by way of a crossbreed between a snake and a toad. A pretty scary, little dangerous, biting creature. In fact, we have it in brachas, the whole story there that it bit somebody, and the victim has to quickly make his way to a body of water to quickly make contact with water. Whoever reaches the water first, him or the arvad, he wins the race. He survives. So this arvad is from the tzav family, and it's also going to be mitame like the tzav. V'chein nefilim, likewise nefilim, which is another type of creature, which is similar as well. With salamandra, this is the legendary salamander, which was produced by way of sorcery through a fire that burns continuously for 7 years. Okay, so salamander is a fire creature. And these all have tumah as well. They're considered like the shratzim. Rabbi Akiva would arrive at this pasuk, just learned, that it covers all these exotic creatures. He would exclaim in wonder to Hashem, Marabu ma'asecha, Hashem, look how rich and varied your creatures are. Right, you have some that grow at sea. Like a fish, right? Fish can't leave the sea, he's connected. He's part and parcel of the water environment. Rambam says fish is part of the Yisoid Hamayim, the water element. That's why as soon as he leaves the water, he dies. On the other hand, we have other creatures, Deos Be'abasha, that grow on land. And they can't mix up. Shabayam, the ones at sea, Ilmalay, if only they leave, they go up to dry land, Miad Meses, they detach from their source and they die. And vice versa as well, Shabiyabasha, the ones whose habitat is dry land. Ilmalay Yardas Liam, if they only go down to the water, Miad Meses, they die, they drown. There are some that grow out of the fire, like the salamander. And some that grow in there. Sheba'ur, the ones of the fire. They go out to the air. Miad Meses, they die. Sheba'avir, the ones that are meant to breathe air. If they go down to the fire, Miad Meses, they die as well. Marab Masecha Hashem. Turn it up on. Oh, there's a parallel system in this world. Kol she'esh b'yabasha, yesh b'yam. All those creatures that we find on dry land, there's a corresponding parallel creature at sea. We have a regular horse, we have a seahorse, right? Chutz min Chulda is an exception. He is exclusive to dry land. Amar B'Zera, my crow, where do we find that in the pasuk? A hint that there's only one dry land Chulda. Azinu kol sheichayda. Listen, all the dry land inhabitants, residents of dry land, and they're called Chalad because the Chulda is exclusive to dry land. Amar Avinu B'Yeshua, you should know, Bivri, someone that Bivri, are the good old beavers. Now the beavers are an interesting creature. They're connected to water, right? They make these dams, they live in water, but they're also dry land. It's sort of a mix. So the beavers, the Norash of this town, Norash, Einon Mina Yishuv. They're not really considered Yishuv, dry land creatures. They have a status of water creatures. Now, what do you think? What's the difference? The difference is, if one eats it, what prohibition has he violated? There's one that relates to dry land creatures that shouldn't be eaten, and one to water creatures. This is a water creature. Tesis learns differently. He says that Bivri is a name of a town, and likewise Norash is. So Bivri and Norash, Einon and Yishuv, the people there are not regular people. They're not great people. They're not involved in learning and chesed. They're just not people you want to hang around with. In fact, Rav Papa says, Amar Papa b'shamta Norash. People in Norash are so to be distanced that they should be excommunicated, as to keep them away and avoid their influence. Tarbe mashche valise, like they say in English, lock, stock, and barrel. Tarbe, it's fat. Mashche, it's hide. Valise, and its tail. Out of the way. Eretz shimid var Hashem. This is Yirmiyah saying, land, people of the land, listen to Hashem's word. Amar Papa, except for the people of Norash. They had earplugs. Ava Norash, shmayid var Hashem. People of Norash were unwilling, uninterested in listening to Hashem's words. Amar Av Gidol Marav. In fact, Narsha, Nashkech, if a fellow from Norash happens to give you a kiss, when you turn around, count your teeth. Mani kachech, count your teeth, lest he swipe it. So make sure you have all your teeth. Nar Pkuda, if a fellow from Nar Pkuda, a different town, Laviech, accompanied you on, escorted you, there must be a good reason. He noticed your shirt and he has his eye on it. Miglima, because of the garment Shapira, this nice garment, the Chazi Allah, that he noticed on you, that's why he's following you. Watch out. And Papadisa, Laviech, if a fellow from Papadisa happened to escort you, so quickly switch your hotel. Ashni Ushpiza, switch your lodging so that he doesn't come visit you middle of the night and help himself to your belongings. Amrav Huna bar Tursa. Interesting, his name was Rav Huna bar Tursa. Sefer Yochanan explains the reason why he's called the son of an ox is because he became a ger, he became a convert. What happened? While he was a guy, he sold his cow to a yid. He purchased his cow from a yid. Now, come Shabbos, the cow stopped working. Right? He was accustomed to a Shabbos off, right? When he was in the hands of a yid. And now he's wondering why his cow's not working on Shabbos. So he runs to the seller, he says, look, your cow is on strike. So the owner comes by and he whispers to the cow, he says, you know what? Times have changed. Until now you belong to me, you were obligated to rest on Shabbos. Now you belong to a guy, you can start working. The guy was so impressed and so taken by the reality of Torah. Even permeates a cow's mind, the cow's behavior, that he was so shaken that he investigated, did his homework, and he became a yid. So he's called Rav Huna, the son of a cow, like we say Avram and Avram, right? Avram Avinu is the Av Hamoin Ge. So the cow made him a yid, so he identifies with the cow. Bar Tersa. So what happened? Pamacha. It so happens that one time Alachti, I ended up in this place, Levad, where they crossbreeded animals. Not a very good place to be. Verisi, I noticed Nachash, a snake, a local snake, hanging around with the toad, and eventually they produced offspring, a kalayim, a crossbreed offspring. Liyamim. A while later, Yotza Arvad, this scary Arvad creature, was produced from the two of them. B'nei Ukshabasi. Later on, when I came to Lifnei Reb Shimon HaChassid, Amarli, he told me, let me explain to you what happened. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hashem says, look, they made it, this crossbreed to produce something which I haven't really created. So they're creating something in sin. Measure for measure, I will bring upon them a bria, dangerous creature, produced from their doings, which hadn't been created until then. A harmful creature that can bite and hurt. Says the Gemara, the question is, how does this even happen? We have a rule that only animals which have similar mating manners and gestation periods, they can produce offspring together. But otherwise, like the snake, whose gestation period is a very prolonged, unique 7-year period, versus the toad, which is a short 6-month period, they can't really mate and produce. Close to Tashmishan, their form of mating, Vibur, and the gestation Shava is the same. They can bear from each other, they can nourish from each other. But otherwise, if it's not a parallel system, they can't mate and they can't produce. En Yolden, how did the Nachash and the Tzav produce this Arvat? Amarav was a double miracle. Nes b'tech nes, double miracle. Firstly, that they would have interest in each other, and secondly, to produce this unlikely creature. Now, why are we calling it a miracle? Which sounds like a positive expression. Hyperanusu, something negative, something detrimental. Hyperanusu, you're right. My nes b'tech nes. What does he mean, a double miracle? Lipuranus. For tragedy. Rashi says, K'dei liparam min harishayim, to get back at the Rishayim, to punish them for their doings. Okay, so we discussed the halacha of the Shmoyne Shratzim, which are specific to land creatures. Anything at sea is not metame, but the land creature which happens to be in the water is still going to be metame. We also included the unique creature, the achbar, which grows out of the ground despite not having been produced through the conventional, mating system. Rekiva's expression, Marab Masech Hashem, in relation to all those rich and varied creatures, and the story about the Arvat. Continues the Mishnah. Ha'eber, you have a limb, v'habasar, or just a piece of flesh, which is partially off the animal. Hamildudalin, so it's mostly severed, it's just, hanging by a strand. Bebehema, so it's hanging off a live animal. What status does that entity have? On the one hand, you can argue that it's still connected to a living being, and that's correct. As Rashi points out, at this stage, it's not yet regarded as Ever Min Hachai, something detached of a live being. It's not, because it's still attached. On the other hand, says the Mishnah, mitamin tumas oichlin. If one should designate it as food, he's going to feed it, to the guy. At that point, it's reclassified as food. So in potential, it has food capacity. If his machshava, his intent, labeled it as such. Okay, so Aver v'abasam dudal bebehema. So this dangling entity off the animal. On the one hand, it's still connected, it's still alive. But since it's, for the most part, detached, it can be transformed, can be reclassified as food. Mitamin tumas oichlin, and now it's open to tumah, it's susceptible to tumah that applies to food. So if a dead lizard touches it, it becomes tummy. Pim kaiman, in its place, despite still being attached. Utsrichan hechsher. However, in order for tumah to affect it, it has to first experience hechsher, which means come into contact with some liquid, which is the standard procedure for food. In order to become tummy, it has to go 1-2-step process. First hechsher, and then touch the tumah. And Rashi points out, you can argue and say, well, why hechsher? This limb is going to be really tummy later on. The animal dies. This limb now turns into an Eiver Menachai. And we know that when something has the ability to generate, to experience a very strong tumah, a very severe tumah, like Eiver Menachai. Eiver Menachai is like an avela, matame, when you touch it, when you carry it, does not require hechsher, because its tumah capacity is so intense, it doesn't need that preparation. So why in this case do we need hechsher? Rashi explains, you know what? You're assuming things. It's not inevitable. Who says this Eiver Menachai will turn into Eiver Menachai? Maybe he'll do shchita, as we're going to see in a minute. When you do shchita, the shchita actually covers this limb as well and spares it from becoming Eiver Menachai. It's as though the Eiver Menachai, this Eiver on the Chai, has also experienced that shchita, which spares it from the Eiver Menachai status. Eiver Menachai by definition means it did not have shchita. But if you do shchita, it will cover the Eiver that's medudal as well. So who says there's going to be tumah chamura on this Eiver, and therefore we treat it like regular food, which needs hechsher to open the door for future tumah. We turn to base. So in this mission, we're going to address three possible setups, three possible scenarios regarding this dangling entity. A is while the animal is still alive. It has sort of a split identity. It can be considered connected on the one hand. On the other hand, it can be considered disconnected with respect to food status, if he designated it as such, as we just learned. Number two is when the animal had shchita. What happens to this limb? What status does it have? So as we just learned, and we'll see in a minute, in greater detail, that in fact the shchita does benefit even this dangling entity, to spare it from becoming Eiver Menachai. Thirdly, unless the animal dies, what happens to this entity? Continues the mission. Nishchita behema, the behema had shchita. Explains Rashi, now the shchita will be metaher, this dangling entity, because ultimately it experienced the shchita together with the animal which it was connected to. Okay, so now this piece is considered like food. What about hechsher? Hechsher b'dameh. Divrei Rav Meir. Rav Meir says no need to make a separate independent hechsher, to pour water over this, because when the animal experienced shchita, the blood of the shchita, which came into contact with the rest of the animal, accomplishes hechsher on the animal, and likewise on this Eiver. Reb Shimon Omer, no, lo yuchsheru. These dangling entities have not benefited from the hechsher that went on with the animal. We'll see in the Gemara what this machlekes is rooted in. Third scenario is if the animal actually dies, mesa behema. So the halacha is that misa ois nipol, which means to say that we don't view this dangling entity as though it already experienced Misa with the animal. Because the fact is, it was already, for the most part, detached from its life source. And as the animal was in the process of dying and getting progressively weaker and weaker, this limb sort of is considered totally detached. When the animal loses life, this limb, which to begin with was barely sustaining itself from the, is now considered completely detached before the animal actually completed its death process. So ultimately, this Aver Hamaduldo never really experienced Misa, and therefore it's not an Avela. Therefore, says the Mishnah, Mesa behema habasa tzarech hechsher. And the reason why the basar needs hechsher, we'll get back to it in a second. Let's just continue the Mishnah. Aver metamim mishum aver menachai, because this Aver is not considered aver menachai because it's as though it left prior to death. It's aver menachai. Ve'ena metamim mishum aver nevela. It's not considered aver nevela because it never really died with the animal, but it is aver menachai. So that's as far as the Aver is concerned. A full limb in this situation is considered Aver Menachai and gives off Tumah. But, as Rashi points out, that's only by Aver Menachai, a full limb. But if it's just a piece of flesh that came off the animal during its lifetime, that's Basar Menachai. Basar Menachai is not Metami. And that's why we go back to that halacha, habasar terach hechsher. That's what the Mishnah says. The basar that's deemed detached will need hechsher to enable it to become tameh like any other food that needs hechsher. Okay, down to the bottom of the Mishnah, Divrei Amir. Shimon Matayr, he says it's Torah, and the Gemara will explain exactly what the machlokes is about. So bottom line, we have three possible scenarios regarding this dangling limb or piece of flesh during the animal's lifetime. It's still considered alive with the animal. It's not Aver Menachai. At most, you can designate it and turn it into food in your mind, which gives it food status and requires hechsher to become tameh. Next, there was shchita on the animal that covers this dangling entity as well. Does the Aver needs its own hechsher? That's subject to machlokes. Then we have when the animal dies, we consider this dangling entity as though it already disconnected before the animal died, in which case that is the din of Aver Menachai, which has its own tumah, but Basar Menachai is not metame, and it needs its hechsher. Continues the Gemara. So, what do we learn in the Mishnah? That you can sort of have it both ways. Right? So in the first case, we have this dangling entity, which is, on the one hand, still alive. It's not Aver Menachai. Aver Menachai has the same tumah as of an Avela. It doesn't have that. But on the other hand, you're saying it's somewhat detached in the sense that you can treat it as food. Says the Gemara, really? Tumas oichlin in. You're giving it tumas oichlin, you're labeling it as food material. Tumas nevela, but not tumas nevela? Because you deem it attached to a live animal? Tumas oichlin, yeah, but tumas nevela not? Says the Gemara, how could you have it both ways? Either it's attached or detached. Now, if it's attached, it's not food. It's a live animal. If it's detached, then it's Aver Menachai. Hey, Chidami, what's going on here? If you anticipate, if you expect this dangling entity to reattach itself, it can re-heal itself, then it's part of the live being. I feel tumas oichlin nami lo litamu. It shouldn't have tumas oichlin either. It's not food. It's a live entity. Videi mal narucha. If it can't re-heal, then tumas nevela nami litamu. It should be like an nevela, meaning it should have the status of Aver Menachai, which has a similar tumah to nevela. Is it on or is it off? La'olam, says the Gemara, certainly the ein mal narucha, it can't re-heal. That explains why it can be considered food. So then why is it not Aver Menachai? V'shani tumas nevela, the Rachmana Amar ki yipo. Pasuk can describe me the Aver Menachai, says ki yipo. It has to be felled. Acha yipol has to totally fall off, which in this case it's not. We find the same in a brisa. You can have it both ways. Right? You have these dangling entities, behema. It's just hanging by a strand of flesh, size of a hair. It's just barely. Perhaps it's considered aver, removed from a chai, which has tumas nevela. Unless it's totally detached, it's still considered connected. But still, says the Gemara, on the one hand, it's part of the live being, and then you say you can have tumas oichlin. That's a big chiddush. You can have it both ways. That's a proof. That's a support to the following halacha. Shmuel teaches us te'inim, a similar halacha regarding fruit. Fruit in limbo can have a split status. Regarding, one aspect, it could be considered connected. Regarding a different aspect, disconnected. Te'inim, figs, shetsamku, which already dried up, bi'bayin, on their trees, so still connected, and the stems are still fresh. They're not moist. They're not dried stems, so it's not totally detached. But the fruit per se is ready to go, ready to be picked. So these are considered food. So if tumah touches them, they become tameh. We don't view them as just still growing on the ground. They're food entities. But when it comes to malacha on Shabbos, one may not pick them on Shabbos. If he picks them off the tree in this state on Shabbos chayiv, he's liable to a chatos. So you see, you can have it both ways. With respect to Shabbos, still connected. With respect to food status, it's totally food. Leivim sayeli, perhaps we can support this halacha by way of another brisa, which seems to state the same idea. Regarding vegetables, yirakos, shetzamku bi'vein, certain vegetables, kugay las, cabbage and pumpkin, that they dried up, which renders them inedible. When they're dried, you can't eat them. So they're still attached to the ground, but they're dried up. They don't have food status regarding tumah. They're not edible. Now this seems to be a pretty simple, basic halacha. Brisa continues. Katzasan v'yibshan. Suppose he did pick them off the ground. V'yibshan, he dried them up. Now, mitama tumas oichlin, they're considered food regarding tumah. Really? How? Katzasan v'yibshan sakadaitach. You mean literally the fellow picked them and dried them up? So then they're not food. Eitz ba'almud, just a piece of wood, it's just inedible. Why is there tumas oichlin? Why is it food? V'amar b'yitzchak, ba'almanas liyapshan. He didn't do it yet. He didn't dry them yet. They're still moist and edible. When he picked them, he intended, that was the plan, to let them sit out and dry and turn them into some sort of, artistic creation, right? So despite his intention to turn them into non-food entities, since they're currently edible, they're considered food. Now let's go back to the first halacha of the brisa, which seems to be a very simple, basic halacha. Apparently the point is for the inference, to infer something from that. Time of the kruva delas. The only reason why, in that first halacha, where he has this kruv and dalas, which totally dried up, do we say that it's not food? Time, it's only because the kruv and dalasu, kivan the yavshan, lavnei achilaninu, these items, once they dry, they're inedible. That's why they're tahar. But the main point is to infer, to make a diuk from there. But something else, like a fig, which is perfectly edible, even once dried, hashar peras, other fruits, other produce, mitami, they are considered food and have tumah potential, despite still being connected to the tree. Now let's delve into this further. Let's clarify exactly what's going on with the stem. Hechidami, what's going on? Idiyavsh hein v'huktsein. The fruit and its stems have dried up. Pshita, of course, I mean that's totally detached. It's no longer connected to it's totally on its way out, right? Of course. The fig would be considered detached. Of course. Pshita, of course it's food. The fruit is dry, the stem is dried up, it's totally severed from the tree's, sustenance. Pshita, of course, elalav below yuktsein. It must be that the fruit is ready, dry, ready to go, but the stem is still moist, still connected to the life source, to the tree. Oh, and what do we see in this brisa? That even though it's still sort of connected to its growth source, the fruit itself is considered like a separate entity regarding Tumas Oichlin. So you see, you can have it both ways. As per Shmuel's halacha, regarding Hilchos Shabbos, it's still considered growing and connected. Regarding Hilchos Tumah, it's like a separate entity. It's a food entity. Says the Gemara, no, lo'olam. Perhaps Hein V'Oktsein, that the Brisa is speaking, where the fruit itself and its stem totally dried up. And in that case, of course, is considered detached. That's not parallel to Shmuel's case. Shmuel speaking where the stem is still moist, but here even the stem dried up. So in this case, certainly, it's considered totally detached from that tree. No, as per your question, why would the Brisa discuss such a simple case? I mean, if it's fully dried up, of course, it cuts it on hamanas liyavshin etzrichalei. The main point is for the next, halach in the Brisa, that the fellow who picked it with the intent, the plan to dry it up, so despite the fact that eventually it's going to turn into non-food, but since it's currently edible, it has tumah. So we thought we had a right to Shmuel. Shmuel's halacha was that you can have it both ways. You can have a fig on a tree with a fig dried, but the stem is still moist. In which case, the fig is still connected through its stem. You can't pick it on Shabbos. But on the other hand, the fig itself has food status because it in itself is already dried up, and therefore it's considered food regarding tumah. We thought we had a right from this brisa, but it isn't necessarily going to be a parallel case and prove anything. Tashmai comes another raya. There's going to be a kasha on Shmuel from a brisa which says, Elon, you have a tree shenivshach, whose branch is totally detached. Okay, you have a branch totally off the tree, with bananas hanging on it. Or by pears, on which we have pears. Hari and ketlushin. These pears are considered totally detached. Yeah? Okay, now Yavshu. Suppose the branch is still on the tree, but the fruit on it have dried up. Harihen kimchubaran. They're still considered growing and connected. Now, let's assume that when the Brisa presented these two contrasts in cases, this is detached and this is attached, we assume it's completely. This is completely detached, and this is deemed halachically is completely attached. My love, let's assume the two cases are a pair. Mat lushin chodavrain, just like in the first case where the branch is totally detached, so the fruit are considered completely detached as well. Regarding all matters, all halachas. Right? So regarding the Shabbos, regarding Tumah, Af Mechubar, and likewise in the second case, which is the parallel case, which is the contrast, where the fruit are still on the branches attached to the tree. The Brisa says, even though they're dry, even though they're ready to come off, Af Mechubar and the Chol Derein still considered attached regarding all matters, even regarding Tumah. They're immune to Tumah. And that's a kasha on Shmuel who says that once the fig is ready to go, once it's dried, it's its own thing. It's matami like food. So as the Gemara the area, you can't prove one from the other. Although the Brisa does give us a pair of cases, but each one in its own context. Midi area, Hakadis, each one relating his own rules. Meaning that in the first case, where the branch is detached, in fact those fruit are considered completely detached regarding all matters. Regarding Shabbos, regarding being susceptible to tumah, but in the second case where we say it's still considered attached, perhaps it's only regarding Shabbos. You can't pick it on Shabbos, but regarding tumah, it can very well be that it has a food status and is makabel tumah as per Shmuel's halach. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have a big chiddush now. Mishnah, you can have something which sort of straddles both sides. You have a limb or a piece of flesh which is technically attached but mostly severed, and as we said, it's ein mala rucha. There's no hope for it. It can't reattach. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says it's still considered part of the live being, and it's not considered Iver Min HaChai. That's based on a pasuk that unless it's completely severed, it's considered part of that live entity. But on the other hand, if you designate it as food, it attains that food status. Likewise, Shmuel taught us regarding a fruit, which had already dried, but its stem is still moist. So on the one hand, it's still connected regarding picking on Shabbos. You may not pick it on Shabbos, but on the other hand, it's already considered food entity regarding the ability to be Mekabel Tumah. We had an attempt at a raya, at a kasha, on this halach. Okay, so let's just recap the first part of the daf. We discussed the various shratzim. Conclusion was that only the land creatures are matame as opposed to the sea creatures. Even if the land creature happens to be in water, it still retains its original land status. And we discussed the various unique and exquisite creatures that Hashem created in this world, which prompted Rabbi Akiva to exclaim in wonder, Marabu Ma'asecha Hashem. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha.